This is Chris Toy, your Boomer Tech Guide, and today we are going to make egg rolls and spring rolls. So one of the things that people sometimes wonder is, what's the difference? Well, in China, there's no such thing as egg rolls. So all these rolls are actually called spring rolls, and they are made in the spring during Chinese New Year. So egg rolls are kind of like a Chinese-American adaptation. Also, in kind of today's use, egg rolls tend to be larger and they're filled with a meat and vegetable filling, whereas spring rolls tend to be more delicate and are usually just vegetarian. But, you know, you could kind of mix and match. So today we're going to make egg rolls with some ground chicken and vegetables, and then we're going to make some vegetarian spring rolls. And I'm going to be sharing an idea that my wife Joan came up with for turning egg roll wrappers into spring roll wrappers. So why don't we get started? Our ingredients, if we kind of go over them, we're going to use these egg roll wrappers, and you can get these right in the refrigerated section of your grocery. We'll have some scallions. We also are going to use some shredded cabbage, sometimes known as coleslaw. You can shred your own, or you can have the grocery, the bag. You can just buy that if you would like. And I'm also going to shred up some carrots for a little bit of texture and color. For the egg rolls, we're going to use some ground chicken. So I'm going to start off by preparing the filling for the egg rolls. And it's really just a really quick stir-fry process. So what we'll do is we'll put some flavoring in, and I'm going to use my favorite, some ginger and some garlic. And I'm just saving a little bit of the garlic aside for my spring rolls, just in case you're wondering. And what we'll do is we're going to put in a very little bit, probably like a tablespoon of oil into my preheated wok. And we'll just turn that right on medium-high. So we'll get that so that the oil is going to heat up. And we will, here we go, that's the ginger, here's our garlic, we'll just put that in together. There we go. I'm using my knuckles against the knife to make sure that I'm nowhere near that sharp edge. So, we'll this in. This should sizzle right away. There we go. So before that gets too hot, what I'll do is I'm going to put in about a 1/4 pound of this ground chicken. You can use ground pork. You could use ground beef, shrimp, lobster, whatever you'd like to do. Just chop it up. So this will cook pretty quickly. So that's going to infuse the flavor of the ginger and the garlic. And I'm going to add a little bit of salt and pepper to this. This is my favorite way to add salt and pepper, is this everyday seasoning. I'll probably put in maybe a 1/4 of a teaspoon, not a lot. We don't want it too salty, but do that to taste. And the reason I'm not adding soy sauce is that we want this to be a relatively dry mixture, because if it's soggy, what will happen is the moisture will dissolve the wrapper. Here we go. And again, that's on medium-high. So that chicken is cooked. And what I'll do now is I'm going to add some shredded carrots. There we go. I'll just put these guys right in. We're just going to soften those up a little bit. And to that, I'll add my shredded cabbage for coleslaw. I'm going to remember to save some for my spring rolls. So I'm just going to soften this up a little bit. I don't want it to be really soggy. So I'm going to turn this heat down now. And we're going to take this filling out. We're going to let this cool off just a little bit. Just to make it easy for us to handle it in a minute or so. So there's our filling. It would be tempting just to try that filling. Right. So while that's cooling off a little bit, let's go over here and let's check our oil. We're going to deep fry these. And here we have, this is my larger 14-inch wok. And I've got about maybe an inch of oil in the wok, and I'm going to put my chopstick in. And what I want is I want the chopstick to bubble. And you can kind of see that that's happening. I've got to turn it up a little bit. I'd like it to bubble a little bit more. You don't want the oil to be too cold because the egg roll will sit in the oil too long. And you really only want to, believe it or not, you only want to have that in the oil, the egg roll in the oil for between 5 and 10 seconds. So that's heating up nicely. All right. So while that's heating up, let's go over here and let's mix up some duck sauce. And the duck sauce really only requires 3 ingredients. And the 3 ingredients are applesauce. So we have some homemade applesauce here, some crushed pineapple, and some balsamic glaze. So let's do this. So in this instance, I'm going to put in equal parts of duck sauce and pineapple. small can of pineapple. You just mix that together. And to that, I'm going to add a tablespoon of balsamic glaze. And we'll just mix that together. So if you don't have balsamic glaze, you can use a mixture of brown sugar and cider vinegar. Is really good. Or red wine vinegar would be pretty good as well. If you don't have applesauce, you could puree up some pears or peaches, even grapes. There you go. So that's ready. So our oil is heated up, so that's good, bubbling. So let's take a wrapper. So this is just pasta. And what we'll do is we'll take 2 or 3 tablespoons of the filling. We'll put it right across the center. I know we're missing out on baseball season, but I'll use a baseball metaphor to remind myself how to do this. So I'm going to, this is the shape of the egg roll. And what I'll do is I'm going to paint around the bases with 3 fingers. The water is the glue. Then I'll take first and third and I'll just spring them together right over pitcher's mound. They can overlap like 1/4 of an inch. Don't overlap too much or it'll shorten your egg roll. And then I will take home plate, I'll bring it up behind pitcher's mound, give it a little tuck, and then we'll roll that right up. I'm going to make sure that second base is nice and wet, because that is where the egg roll will seal. All right, we'll do that one more time. You want to make sure that you only get 1 layer. They tend to stick together. So here you can see I have 2 layers. All right. We'll take a couple tablespoons, 3 tablespoons, right across pitcher's mound. And second base, first and third, pitcher's mound right up, and we'll roll that. So we've got 2 of these guys. So let's go over here. Check this again. Bubbling. You see the bubbling? That's good. So what we'll do, before we put the egg roll in, we're going to pat it, we're going to flatten it a little bit. And we do that so that when I go to turn it over, it doesn't try to roll back over. So if it's a little bit flattened, it'll be easier to get both sides fried. So here we go. We're going to slide one in, and you can see that it just starts bubbling right away, and that's what you want. And so just like a pancake, you look around the edge, and when the edge has turned light brown, it's time to turn it over. So that was probably about 5 seconds. And when you turn it over, the second side takes even less time. So we'll pull that right out. And this half moon rack is really great. What it does, you can see it, is it lets the oil drip down back into the wok, and it also keeps it warm. So I put the second one in. It's turned brown around the edges, so we'll give it a turn. You don't have to use chopsticks if you don't want. You can use tongs. 2 forks. All right, and then we'll just grab this guy, and you can see, I'll turn him over so you can see. So that cooked really nicely. So when I serve egg rolls, what I like to do is I like to cut them at a 45-degree angle. So you can see what happens is they make a great scoop. So let's try this one. It's really hot. It all is. And so you scoop that. Yum. Fresh and tasty. But we're not done yet. But wait, there's more. So let's let this rest over here. So I promised you a hack. And normally, thank you. Normally, you have to buy the spring roll wrappers separately, and they are very thin, almost like phyllo dough. But what we found out is that if you take a stack of wrappers, I'm going to take 3 here. Take a stack of wrappers and run them through the thinnest setting on a pasta roller, they actually become spring roll wrappers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off about 1 inch of this so that it fits here. And this is on the thinnest setting, and we have 3 wrappers. So what we'll do, I'm going to make sure that these aren't folded back. Here we go. Here we go. We're going to put this right through. And you can see that we have 1, very thin, 2, and 3 wrappers. So what I'll do now is I'll cut these into squares. But before I do that, because I don't want them to dry out, what we'll do is we'll put the filling together for the spring roll wrappers. So remember what we said is that spring roll wrappers are more delicate, and you really only use vegetables. So we'll start off with just a touch of oil. There we go. We'll turn this heat on. Good. And we'll do our smashing again. Chop that up. Put that right in. We're not going to put in our meat. We're going to put in our cabbage. And I'm going to put in a few scallions slivered up. Just a stir. So if you wanted to add a little protein to this, you could crumble up some tofu. If I were going to use tofu, I'd use some extra firm because it has less liquid. Remember, you want this to be pretty dry. And maybe a little bit of salt and pepper. Let me shut that off. Smells good. So I'll let this cool off a little bit. And while it's cooling off, what we'll do is we will cut our spring roll wrappers into squares. And the easy way to do that is simply to fold down so you get a 45-degree angle and just slice again. So you can see when you roll out the egg roll wrappers, you'll get twice as many spring roll wrappers. So instead of 3, we have 6. But they're going to be a lot smaller. Spring rolls tend to be appetizers. So here we go. It's the same way, just on a smaller scale. So there's our baseball diamond. We'll take probably just maybe a tablespoon or so right on pitcher's mound. Let's paint around the bases. Make sure second base is nice and wet. First and third, right over. Home plate, up to second base, pitcher's mound rather, and then we'll roll it up to second base. And you can see the difference in the size of these. Let's do one more, just so you can get the idea. You don't want to overfill these, because the dough is pretty tender. But you can almost see right through the dough. You can see the pattern of the cutting board. There we go. Up, tuck, and roll. All right, let's do this. So let's make sure. So you really want to make sure this is nice and warm. So, yep, see it's bubbling. That's what you want. And by the way, bubbling is probably around 340, 350 degrees. If it catches fire, it's too hot. So flatten these. We'll just slide those right in. Just slide that one in. By the time I put that second one in, that first one, you can see it starting to turn brown around the edges. So we'll just turn that over. See, it's a good thing we flattened it because it does want to flip over. And then we'll do this one here. There. This one, whoops, see, this one flipped over. I wasn't firm enough with it. There. Right. So here's, this one's done. This one's misbehaving. I'll just put him in there. All right. So, spring roll. Oh, no, spring roll, egg roll. So I'm going to try this spring roll. Whoa, that's hot. Really hot. I'll give this a slice. Yum. This is the best part of teaching cooking. So here's our spring roll. Yum. So that's it. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time. The basic wonton soup, which is the original comfort food, just like chicken noodle soup, except this is wonton soup. So we're going to start off with about 3 quarts of broth, and what I like to use is Better Than Bouillon. What I like about Better Than Bouillon is it has no MSG in it, and mostly natural ingredients. And what I'm going to do here, so I'm going to put in enough bouillon to make it half strength. So I don't want this to be super salty. So if it says 1 teaspoon for 1 cup, you're going to put 1 teaspoon for 2 cups. And I think probably 1 more of these tablespoon-sized helpings in there. So we'll just set that aside. What I'm going to add to the broth is dried mushrooms. And these, you can get these in the Asian markets. You can also get them in most local grocery stores, but they're a lot cheaper if you get them from the Asian markets. You can also order them online. And you often have a choice between sliced mushrooms and whole mushrooms. I would recommend that you use sliced mushrooms. They cost the same by weight. So you're going to get someone to do the cutting for you here, the slicing. If you have whole mushrooms, what you'll need to do is you'll need to put them in, wait about 10 minutes, take them out, and then slice them up and put them back in. But if you get them pre-sliced, you're going to be good to go, and they'll actually reconstitute much faster, probably twice as fast. So like 5 minutes, these will be ready. The question is often asked, can I use fresh mushrooms? The answer is yes, you certainly can, but they won't have the same texture and they won't have the same flavor as the dried mushrooms. And these are called shiitake, or black mushrooms, and they're pretty tasty. So while that's reconstituting, let's move to the filling for our wontons. And we're going to be using ground pork for our filling. You can use ground beef, you can use ground chicken, turkey, lamb, and if you're vegetarian, what I would do is I would crumble up some tofu. So the filling that we're going to use is the pork today, and we're going to add to it some fresh garlic. So We'll just smash that garlic and give that a slice. So the other flavor that we'll be using here is ginger. And normally I would use fresh ginger. I'd slice a piece off and I would smash it just like this. But today I don't have fresh ginger. What I have is some very good high quality ground ginger. So the recipe is going to call for a certain amount of ginger, or fresh ginger. If you use the dried ginger, it's much more concentrated, so you're going to use about 1/3 as much of the dry ginger. And what we'll do is we're going to just fold this right in. So this is going to be a very, very simple flavoring. We're not going to add anything else. Sometimes folks will ask, well, can we put in other flavorings? The answer is certainly you can. One favorite is to add a little bit of soy sauce, but we're not going to do that this time. We're going to let the flavor of the broth, of the bouillon, add the salt that we want. Bouillon is salty, so you don't need to add a lot more salt here. And we want the flavor of the pork and the chicken, the pork and the spices to come through. So that's well mixed. So let's push that aside and let's talk about the wrappers. So wonton wrappers are basically just pasta. And you can buy wonton wrappers at the store, and they'll be all sliced into squares for you. Or you can buy egg roll wrappers and cut them into quarters. What I have found is that if you buy the egg roll wrappers and take the 3 seconds that it takes to cut it into quarters, you get about 1/3 more wrappers. Apparently they charge you extra to cut them up. So these you get right in the grocery section, in the refrigerated grocery section. And what we'll do, we'll just take our knife here and cut them in half and in half again. And there's our wonton wrappers. So often the trickiest thing when doing this is just making sure that they're well separated. So you want to make sure you do that, get them separated, because you do not want a double layer. There we go. All right. So I'm going to show you 3 ways, and there are more than 3 ways, but I'm going to show you 3 ways to fold your wontons. You're going to need a little bit of water, and you're going to lay this down just like a baseball diamond. Home plate, first, second, third, pitcher's mound. And you're going to take a teaspoon of the filling, put it right in the middle. You'll run the bases. The water is the glue. You'll take home plate, you'll bring it up to second base, making an isosceles triangle, and you'll just press that. And that is a wonton. That's like ready to eat. If we want to get a little fancier, what we can do, start off the same way. And by the way, you don't want to take more than a teaspoon, because the wrapper cooks in about a minute, minute and a half. And if you're filling, if it's too big, it's going to take too long to cook, and you're going to have to, you'll overcook the pasta. So in order to cook the pork, no one wants undercooked pork. So keep it small so it cooks. So we started the same way, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap this around my middle finger. I'm going to bring the other corner over, and I'm just going to squeeze just like that. And we'll have maybe a dinner napkin or the Pope's hat or something like that. I'll show you one more time. There we go. And you'll see I'm using a knife because I have more control over the amount that I would put in there relative to a spoon. Home plate up to second base, making an isosceles triangle. One corner, roll it. There's the other one. If you get confused, you can stop the video and you'll be able to see what it is I'm doing here. I'll do this one more time. Then I'm going to show you the advanced fold. So we'll paint the bases. Home plate up to second base. Roll it onto my middle finger and squeeze. And you can give that a nice hard squeeze so it doesn't come apart. So the advanced fold starts out the same way. It all starts the same way. Paint the bases. Home plate to second base. So what we'll do is I'm going to push the center here down a little bit, get my finger out, then I'm going to come straight up. So it kind of looks like ears. Then I'm going to come straight up and cross the ears on the top. I'm not going to go front to back. So it's kind of, looks a little bit like a little boat. We'll do that again. Get a little filling. Run the bases. Seal that up. Here we go. Push down. Come up. You got the bat's ears maybe. And then cross it on the top. If you go front to back, you'll end up with this. If you cross it up on the top, you'll end up with this one here. All right. And I'm going to show you one last time, and then we're going to cook because I'm getting hungry. So, okay. We're painting the bases. Home plate is going up to second base. We're sealing that. Make a little dent, get your finger out, don't wrap it around your finger. Bring the ears straight up and give it a squeeze. There you have it. All right. So our broth has been bubbling away merrily. Our mushrooms, they're softened up, but they're still going to be nice and chewy, which is, if you use the fresh mushrooms, you won't get that chewy consistency. All right, so what we'll do is we want this to be boiling, and we want it to be a nice healthy boil, because as I put these in, it's going to cool this down. It's going to cool the broth down. So we can put these in as fast as we want, but we have to put them in one at a time, because if they're touching, when they go in, they will stick together. As long as they go in separately, they'll be fine. And they'll take about 2 minutes to cook. We'll give those a little stir. And you can kind of see the boiling has stopped, but that will build up again within the 2 minutes. So while we're waiting to do that, let's get some vegetables in there. So one vegetable that we're going to use is Bok Choy. And Bok Choy is a Chinese cabbage, and it's part of the mustard family. It actually grows really well in Maine. It has a blanched, very smooth stalk, and the leaves are very mild. They're kind of like Swiss chard. And what we'll do is we'll just slice these diagonally in about 1/2-inch slices, just like that. And when I get to the leaves, just so the leaves aren't super long, I'll kind of alternate my 45-degree angle here. All right. So it's been about a minute on the broth, and you can see. Let me just show you. You can tell when these are beginning to cook up, they turn the skin turns a little translucent, and they shrivel up around the filling. So these are almost ready. And what I'll do is I'm going to just sprinkle the bok choy right on top. And then I'll add some scallions. And I'll slice off this root so we can plant those. And in a couple of weeks, we'll have fresh scallions to use from those. And I'm going to cut these again in about 1/2-inch diagonal pieces. And what I like to do is I'll take these scallions, and in order to distribute the flavor of the scallions throughout the soup, I'll squeeze them as I put them in. Just like that. And this is boiling again. So we'll give that a stir. All right. So the wontons are cooked. And my greens, I like to have them pretty crispy. So I'm not going to leave those in for very long, not more than a minute or so. And we are ready to taste this. So there's some wontons and some mushrooms, some bok choy, and the flavor of the ginger and the garlic will also, not only do they flavor the wontons, but they will flavor the soup as well. One thing I would add is that you should only cook as many wontons as you're going to eat, because they're no good left over. So what you can do with the wontons that you, if you make a whole package of them, you can put them on a tray and then put them in the freezer, let them freeze, then put them into a Ziploc bag, and then sometime when you want to have a quick meal, just boil up some broth and throw the wontons in. You probably want to cook them for maybe 5 minutes if they're frozen. So let's have a taste here. Wonton dumplings, fresh. Yum. So that's it for now. Thanks for coming by, and we'll see you next time.